Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to thank you all for attending today. And for sure, we want to thank our great organization, which is Sasbigan, for giving us this opportunity to host this dinner today. And today I'm presenting Nutricia, not only Nutricia KSA, but Nutricia Middle East at all. And today we have also some participants from another countries. So thank you for this invitation. And for sure, thank you for accepting our invitation today for this scientific meeting. Okay. Before we start, let's introduce myself. My name is Saher. Allah yakfiku shar Saher. I am the Health Innovation, Medical Affairs and Market Access Manager for Nutricia Middle East. And it's my pleasure to be here today to talk about Nutricia, and then I will leave the floor to our great speakers and great chairperson to lead this session. Okay. This is Nutricia in glance. This is our heritage. This is Nutricia. We are part of Danone, and at the same time, we are present in more than 100 countries all over the world. And at the same time, we have a portfolio of science, which is part of our DNA to deliver everything based on science, to deliver innovation based on research. And before I started my presentation and talk more and more about researches and about our portfolio, let me share with you this video. It's only 2 minutes video to give you some context about Nutricia Middle East and Nutricia all over the world.
Lorena, as a baby, cried day and night because she was allergic to cow's milk. Christoph, a husband, was given a cancer diagnosis. His weight loss left him weak and unrecognizable. Ron, a husband and grandfather, fought for his breath and struggled to eat. Each life has been given new hope, a more certain future. Now Lorena sleeps contentedly. She explores everything and anything. Christoph has a reason to live, seeing days he thought he'd never ever see. Ron regains some of his energy and love for life. Behind these stories, and many more, playing a key role in transforming these lives, was a special form of nutrition: medical nutrition. While the power of nutrition is well known, when illness challenges our health, the vital role of medical nutrition is often unknown or overlooked. For 125 years, we have been changing the lives of millions of people around the world, inspiring us to take nutritional science further than ever before, to change even more lives, to save even more lives.
This is our journey, how we started from infancy till elderly. This is our message, how to support every patient or every part from the family based on his situation or her situation. Okay. During the video, we highlight that we have over than 125 years. We celebrated last year in 2020, by end of 2021, December, we celebrated 125 years. So all of these years based on science, based on research, based on a lot of stories and evidence. As an example, if you look in 1896, we started with the latest nutritional science lead to the establishment of Nutricia itself, moving to the introduction of nutritional news and educating healthcare professionals on the role of a specialized nutrition and a specialized formula. So we started our journey with the education since 1950. And this is our message as a Nutricia. And if we look to 2009 or 2018, we have a lot of innovation, not only related to a specific type of patient, but across certain types and a lot of patients. Okay, this is our right. The human rights mentioned that the nutrition is one of our rights all over the world, and we are believe that the nutrition is the cornerstone for anyone across, for any disease or any condition to support this patient. Okay, we believe on the better of clinical outcome. We need to improve the quality of life, and also we need to put on our mind reduce the healthcare cost. And here, if you allow me, I will highlight something. We are lucky because we are in Saudi Arabia. يعني المملكة during the last 2 or 3 years across the COVID-19, how this strong system reflect on the how this strong system support the patient, support all sectors. There's no difference between Saudi and non-Saudi across the COVID-19. So thank you for Saudi Arabia for this great support and for anyone living here in this kingdom. And we are lucky because we are in Saudi Arabia. So thank you for Saudi Arabia for this great. So for this reason, we start to think as a Nutricia, we need to support the growth and the development. We need to protect and improve immunity of our population. And at the same time, we need to enhance the recovery for the adult population and to support the healthy aging. And this is our new concept that will come in the future, inshallah. Okay, back to basics. Put all what you have in front of your eyes and look if we have the prematurity, which is represent 1 out of 10 babies in the Middle East born as a premature. We have around 30 to 40% from the population across the Middle East suffering from allergy. We have around 1.8 million new cases every year suffering from cancer. If we look to diabetes, we will find 5 countries across the Middle East. They are from the top 10 countries suffering from diabetes, and for sure the inborn error metabolism. And now if we look to governmental sector and now in the private sector, this screening and the treatment of this type of disease is completely secured 100% with zero cost for the patient and for the family. The same story we started to think about. We need to support the immunity. We need to think about the faltering growth. We need to think about the metabolic and the epilepsy. And for sure, we need to look to the gut health, allergy, and the last one, the healthy aging. For this reason, we can collect the concept of 40 years of human milk researches. We collect 100 scientific researches, discoveries, and more than 600 publications across our discovery in this center, which is R&D center, to provide 2 strong research R&D center to support the research and support the education and to provide innovation for the new community and our community all over the world. Also, we need to put in our mind and in our DNA the healthcare professional. We need to provide innovative solution, evidence-based science, complete portfolio of the product, as I mentioned, from infancy to elderly, and for sure, face-to-face detailing to support And we back again to the concept of face-to-face to interact with the HCP and get more insight from them. For sure, the HCP educational website and also medical conferences and CME, because this is the place that we can offer high educational content, and for sure some HCP tools to support the HCP. This is what we will offer starting from 2022. Also, we put the patient on our mind. The patient tools, patient education, and for sure patient programs and CRM. Finally, we conclude what we need to achieve. We have more than 600 publications, as I mentioned. We have a completed portfolio and service for our population, and we have more than 125 years of pioneering specialized nutrition, supporting the community from infancy till elderly, and for this we transformed to support the community. Thank you for the listening and for sure for attending today. And now we finalize the part of Nutricia, and we will start scientific meeting for today. So let me introduce our first guest today, Dr. Wajih Al-Dekhail. Dr. Wajih Al-Dekhail, he is our chairperson for today that will lead the complete discussion with our great speakers today. Dr. Wajih Al-Dekhail, he is associate professor of College of Medicine at Faisal University, consultant of pediatric gastroenterology, hepatology, and the chairman of pediatric research committee, and he is director of pediatric research unit, the Department of Pediatric King Faisal Specialized Hospital Research Center, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Without further ado, please welcome with me Dr. Wajih Al-Dekhail. He is director of pediatric research unit, the Department of Pediatric King Faisal Specialized Hospital Research Center.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Sahir, for the kind introduction and taking us through this journey and showing us the history of innovation from Nutricia Company over the past 125 years. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome our first speaker for this evening, Dr. Luay Qurunfula. Dr. Luay Qurunfula is an assistant professor of pediatrics at King Saud bin Abdul Aziz University for Health Sciences, and is a consultant in allergy and immunology and asthma, the Department of Pediatrics in King Abdul Aziz Medical City, National Guard Health Affairs. Dr. Luay will be talking this evening to us about the microbiota in early life and its implications on health. So welcome, Dr. Luay.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Should I remove the mask? I'm very grateful. Thank you, Nutricia, for inviting me to be part of this among those pioneers in the field. So I know you guys been hearing about microbiota in the last probably years. So let's look at the microbiota from another perspective and from the immunology perspective. And is there any science or evidence that what we learn or we keep hearing about the microbiota and its role in protecting our body? Science is changing, science is evolving. What we usually or we used to recommend in the last 10, 20 years now is something else or different. And I always bring the LEAP study as part of how do we change our practice, how do we change our recommendations. If you, I guess most of you are aware of the LEAP study. LEAP study was published in 2015. LEAP was looking at the high-risk infants who had a positive family history of A to B, and they introduced peanut to them early in life, like after the age of 6 months. Because we used to recommend that you have to wait for peanut until 1 or 2 years and then you introduce peanut. But they introduced peanut to a high-risk group early in life, and they discovered that those who received peanut early in life, they had less allergy. Those in red, in different ethnic backgrounds. So if you introduce peanut early in a very high risk group, you have less peanut allergy in the future. So that changed our recommendation, changed our belief, changed that what we used to say that, how do we go back? Huh? فوق ولا تحت؟ This one, sorry. We used to say avoid. Now we tell patients go ahead and eat. And most of you probably are not aware of the LEAP-ON. LEAP-ON study, they looked at the same group who introduced or received peanut early in life. And then they said, okay, so this group, we introduced peanut early. They had no allergy. What if we stop giving them peanut? Let's see what happens. So when they stopped giving them peanut, they found that the risk of allergy is still low. So the bottom line here, the highlight was early introduction of peanut will develop less allergy in the future. But if you read carefully, so those who received peanut early in life, so there is a critical period in early in life. You engineer or you regulate the immune system in a way, what happens in the first few years of life can have a lot of consequences in the future. This is what happens if you are allergic. These are our T cells. So if you are allergic, your T cells proliferate. So that's what we call allergy. However, what we looked and what we understand now, if you have a tolerance or if you receive tolerogenic antigen, so T cells, they don't proliferate and you don't develop symptoms, what we call anarchy or functional unresponsiveness. The other step or the other stage, which the antigen can be non-immunogenic, so nothing happens. Definitely we don't need that. However, how can we switch or move our antigens from immunogenic to tolerogenic antigens? That brings us to this. We know that our T cells works, or at least we know until recently that T cells works in two pathways. Pathway one, we call it Th1, in which our T cells kill bacteria or microbes, and Th2, in which our T cells deal with allergies. However, after the LEAP, we went few steps back and we discovered, or we know now, that it is not only two pathways. Our T cells works in 4 different pathways. Th1, which we still know, in which our T cells deal with bacteria. Th2, which led or upregulated by what we call interleukin-4, which is the atopic pathway. And Th3, if you want to call it, in which our T cells deal with the extracellular microbes. And there is a pathway which is very interesting. We call it the Treg, or the T regulatory T cells. So, and that pathway in which our immune system can tolerate, or we have what we call down regulation of our immune system. So how can we move, or how can we switch our antigens from immunogenic to tolerogenic? We found, or scientists discovered, that in order for that antigen, for our immune system to recognize it, or at least do not react to it, you need special or specific criteria in that antigen. These criteria, which include the structure of the antigen, the dose, the route of administration, and the stage of differentiation in which the lymphocyte received that antigen. Each character or each specific part of that antigen, we now practice based on that. So let's look at this one. So the stage of differentiation, so the timing, I will tell you why I'm focusing on this point. So the timing in which our immune system receive or expose to that antigen is very important for our immune system to tolerate it. So that brings us to what we keep hearing about, the first 1,000 days. You heard about the first 1,000 days. Why these days are very important. Why we keep telling our mothers exclusive breastfeeding for the 6 months. What is very golden about that 1,000 days? What is very important about that period? So that period, again, we go back. So whatever that baby receives in the first 1,000 days, 2 years, is very critical, in which our immune system can recognize or tolerate that antigen. We know that in the first 1,000 days, our brain, liver, immune system develops, and they peak at that age, which is 2 to 4 years. We know that the growth itself in the first 2, 3 years are maximized. So the growth itself, growing weight and height, as well as brain size in the first 2, 3 years, is very critical and very important. We know that cognitive development, internal organ maturation, our immune system, as well as the body composition, happens during that critical time. If you look at the brain and the higher functions, they start, some of them, early in life. However, they most of them, like the visual development, the emotional sensations, the habits, language, logic, understanding, happens in the first 2 or 3 years of life. One of my favorite slides, how our immune system mature over the first until adulthood. Those in dark blue are immature or not available. So most of the immunoglobulins are not available in birth. That's why we don't do IgGs at birth. They mature over time. And if you look at 1 to 2 years, almost every part of our immune system either is already there or it is developing to reach an adult level. Our immune system is not only cells, we have organs, we have vessels, the lymphatic vessels. If you look at this slide, the largest part, the largest thing you can see is the gut. Gut is still part of our immune system. It is equal or bigger or larger than the skin, which is part of the immune system. So the majority of our immune system sits or besides or in the gut. So let's look what happens in there. The gut, we know that 70 to 80% of our immune cells are available in the intestine, in the gut. We know that there are millions of neurons, so it's a very sensitive area. And there is what we call mucosal surface. The mucosal surfaces, whether it's in the lungs or the gut, it's very thin to allow something called transfer of nutrients or transfer of metabolites. And there is something called, and you know this, bacteria. There are millions of bacteria in the gut, which what we call microbiota. So do you think it's by chance having those bacteria in the gut with that amount of immune cells and they don't interact and they don't communicate? So let's look into that from the immunology perspective. This is the gut, if you look at it, at birth. And those green forks here, these are the microbiota. These are the gut or the bacteria which lives in the gut. And they start to develop from birth. You have an amount of bacteria which is there, and they grow over time. We know that our immune system recognize or it's responsible for the self, non-self. Most of these gut microbiota or bacteria, they don't penetrate. However, if they penetrate, there is something different will happen. I'll show you in the next slide. So these are our immune cells, what we call it Pierce patches. Pierce patches contains B cells, T cells, and they sit right here. So any microbe or any bacteria, once they get in, they received by this Pierce patches, in which the processing happens, and then it tells the B cells what to do, to kill or to leave. These bacteria, if you look at them, they have something here in yellow. So they increase what we call mucus. So the mucus secretion itself, it helps us, if you look at that, the size of these epithelial cells are getting bigger, or what we call it, growth of the epithelial cells. And here there is a cell, or we call it Banith cells. These Banith cells are very important and critical part of our immune system. It has a very strong antimicrobial ability, and it is promoted or upregulated by those bacteria. Those bacteria or microbiota, sometimes they cross. Anything cross should be dealt with the immune system. Either you kill it or react to it. So what happens if the microbiota penetrate our immune system is something unique. It gets the immune system activated, definitely. The dendritic cells, what we call the antigen presenting cells. So it gets activated. However, it doesn't activate Th1 or Th2. It activates what we call the T regulatory, the pathway number 4, in which we have down regulation of the immune system. That's very interesting. What's more interesting, the B cells, if you are resting, if you don't have an infection, on the surface of the B cells, we have IgM. If you have an infection, IgM happens, they do something called class switching. IgM turns to IgG. If you are an allergic person, IgM turns into IgE. In case of microbiota penetration, the IgM turn into IgA. And the IgAs, we know the function of the IgAs. It's very important for the secretory part and the mucous membrane protection. So in summary, these microbiota, what are the immunological parts which are these microbiota can help? Number one, we said it increase epithelial cell proliferation from the slide. It can increase the mucus secretion, which is very protective. Mucus is a biochemical component part of our immune system. The Banith cells maturation definitely happens with the help of the microbiota. Th regulatory pathway, number 4, or what we usually, it's down-regulate the immune reaction. And B cell maturation and IgA production. So these are from the basic immunology perspective, how these microbiota can help our immune system. So microbiota is very important, as we understand, to our immune system. And now, how can we keep it? How can we maintain it? There are plenty of birth cohorts which states that there are some factors which can affect this microbiota. What are these factors? The mode of delivery. Oh, so now we understand why those children who are born with cesarean section, they are more prone to develop allergy in the future. If you connect that to this, those who are born to those who are born with a cesarean section, they have less microbiota than those who are delivered vaginally. Number 2, early life antibiotic administration. Again, there is a birth cohort called Zachary, which is the largest allergy-related birth cohort study, showed that early life antibiotic administration can lead to more atopic diseases in the future. So now we are connecting these sciences or dots together. Of course, there are some genetics, maternal factors, gestational age. So these microbiota they are very delicate and they can be affected by many factors. So maintaining that gut microbiota in the first 2 years, or disrupting, or what we call it, dysbiosis, disrupting this microbiota in the first 2 years can lead to many health-related issues. One of them is allergy and problem in growth. There are some papers about obesity and diabetes and hypertension. And the best way to look at that, if you compare healthy infants who are on breastfeeding, when you compare them to on infants who are with cow milk allergy. So if you look at that microbiota, if you look at the healthy infants who are on exclusive breastfeeding, they have different kinds of bacteria or microbiota, like the bacteroids and the lactobacilli. But if you look at those cow milk allergic, definitely they received cow milk early in life. You have a different composition of this microbiota. So that's the ideal way to look at this microbiota. How is that implicated to our health? Now we agree, we definitely don't recommend avoiding anymore as a way of tolerance. So you have to start challenging your immune system from early in life. If you look at these steps or stages, you have to understand that the route administration and stage of differentiation is very important. Now, our immune system needs training, so we agree that the microbiota is important. Avoiding is not a solution, so you need to receive that antigen, or your immune system need to receive it early in life. So that's what we call controlled exposure. So the dose, number 1 and 2, when I said the characteristic, the dose of the antigen needs to be calculated or careful with. And of course, you need to maintain that gut microbiota. And the ideal or the role model in delivering that controlled protein exposure and gut modulation is the breast milk. If you study or analyze the breast milk, you will find, number 1, there is a very ideal controlled protein exposure. You are exposed to the antigen, as we said. And number 2, definitely you have the gut microbiota, which we are looking for. And not only that, we found that there is something called, or scientists found that there is something called oligosaccharides. They call it human milk oligosaccharides. These human milk oligosaccharides work as, it's sugar, so it works as a feeding material for those bacteria. So you have the microbiota, the right microbiota, and you have the feeding material for the bacteria which we are looking for. So the live bacteria like Bifidobacteria and Lactobacilli, and the oligosaccharides, or we call them human milk oligosaccharides. Not only that, if you look at the breast milk, there is more. The human milk oligosaccharides, which are available in the breast milk, interesting enough that they block bacteria in 2 different ways. So they prevent infection in 2 different mechanisms. Number 1, those human milk oligosaccharides, طبعا bacteria, for the bacteria to invade, it needs to be attached to a surface or to be attached to a receptor. So the human milk oligosaccharide, it gets attached to the bacteria receptor. Not only that, it gets attached to the cell receptor. So it prevents the infection in 2 ways. So not only the human milk oligosaccharides can feed the microbiota, which we already seen how it's important for our immune system, it also prevents infection. However, there are variation and variability among different mothers from different genetic backgrounds, and the composition of breast milk is very variable. However, they share the same group of microbiota or bacteria, which we are looking for. If you analyze them, you know that Bifidobacteria, at least brevi, you will hear about this, that 50% of the microbiota in the breast milk are brevi, and the rest are adolescentes or Bifidium. So what we take home today with us, or go home with, these are the messages. Our immune system, you cannot leave the immune system without training. You need to train, or what we call develop immune fitness. That immune fitness or immune system training can happen by 2 things. Controlled exposure. I keep saying the controlled exposure. So the protein or what the antigen, what you are giving, you have to be careful of what you give. 2, gut microbiota modulation early in life. Dysbiosis is a state in which imbalance happens between the commensal bacteria and the harmful, and it happens due to many factors, as we mentioned. Our immune system continue to develop after birth. A lot of people think that the immune system is ready to function by birth. It's not. The gut is the largest immune organ, if you can call it, and there are millions of immune cells which are in the gut, act as protection. That barrier, the gut, because most of our growing children, their first sense is their mouth, so they eat. That's what they do. So the gut is the first line of defense. And that's why 70 to 80% of the immune cells are in our gut. There are bacteria. We know that they live in our gut. There are millions or billions of bacteria. We call it the microbiota. The best time or the nutrition, the best nutrition in which our immune system can receive or support the development of our immune system in the first years of life. The breast milk contains not only microbiota which are useful for our immune system, it also contains what we call the human milk oligosaccharides. We have seen how human milk oligosaccharides are beneficial not only for the growth of that microbiota, it also can help preventing infection by blocking the interaction between the bacteria and the cells. I leave you with this slide that the WHO recommends that children should be exclusively breastfed. If you are keeping up with the update in the last few years, there was a trend of allergy prevention. There was #1 recommendation in the allergy prevention, that exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life. Even if you start weaning or introducing solid foods, it is highly recommended that you continue to breastfeed for the first 2 years of life. Again, 2 years comes to the surface. It is very important opportunity, breastfeeding by ingesting those nutritional compounds, bioactive components. And the human milks is not only containing those microbiota or beneficial health promotion, it can help by promoting the growth of that microbiota. We have a treasure. The treasure is available and it's free and cheap. What we need to do is to promote those mothers and children to use that treasure more. And by that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Luay, for the amazing presentation and well illustrated. For the next speaker for this evening, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Ali Al-Mhaidib. Dr. Ali Al-Mhaidib is a well-known figure in pediatric gastroenterology. He's a section head and senior consultant in pediatric gastroenterology and hepatology in the Department of Pediatrics at King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center in Riyadh. Dr. Ali Al-Mhaidib is also the chairman of the scientific committee and board member of the Saudi Society of Pediatric Gastroenterology, Hepatology and Nutrition, the SASPGAN. Dr. Ali Al-Mhaidib, for this evening, he will be presenting us a talk and introducing us to the Biotics family, which I hear are a good family. Inshallah, نتكون عائلة وحمولة طيبة inshallah. So he'll be giving us some of the essential knowledge on the Biotics family. So welcome, Dr. Ali.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am very happy to be with you today. I would like to thank Nutricia for this invitation. Today I will have very simple slides. The complicated slide was in the first presentation by Dr. Luay, and I was asked to talk about the Biotic family. To start with, breastfeeding has been discussed yesterday, today, and the importance of, breastfeeding is very clear to everybody. It is the primary source of nutrition for newborns before they are able to eat and digest other foods. And it is our role to promote breastfeeding either in health or in disease in these infants. It supports development of gut microbiota and immune system, as was mentioned in the previous presentation. And the WHO recommend exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months and introduction of complementary feeding while breastfeeding is continued up to the age of 2 years. These are very essential, important, statements that should be, stated in this presentation. So the breast milk will protect against infection, lead to optimal growth, maturation, and development of these infants, and programming for later life. And these are some of the composition and functionality of breastfeeding. You see, it's a very rich, content. You have energy and brain and immunity development through fat. Prebiotic will help in immunity, will help the development of microbiota and gut health. And protein will assist in growth and immunity as well, while carbohydrate is mainly for energy, in addition to other functional components which are very clear for the well-being of these infants, including beneficial bacteria. So breast milk is not a sterile, fluid. It contains bacteria. If you talk breast milk, there are high variability of the composition of breast milk among mothers, and even the same mother between the early feeding and late feeding. And it is very clear that if you have a good health or a good healthy mother, then you will have a good and healthy child. According to the WHO numbers, the exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months saves 820,000 lives per year, and it is very tremendous. Almost 1,000,000 is saved over the globe every year by breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding. And as I mentioned, if you have a healthy mother, then you will have a healthy baby. We'll talk about the biotic family, and we need to have or agree on definitions, because if you are talking about something not clear, then we may be confused. So if you take the family per se, family consists of a father and a mother and children, boys, girls, and if you have the first generation, you have grandmother, grandfather. Also, when we talk about families in medicine, we talk always about family pedigree. This is a single palm tree, and if you are talking about a family, then this is a family of palm trees. But interestingly, I will ask Dr. Shamrani to tell you whether this is a family or this is a single palm tree. Ali. It is a family. So sometimes you have exceptions. So, it depends. It depends, yes, but sometimes you have exception. But unless we agree on, the definition, then we can understand each other. On the other part, this is a visual, definitions, what you see, and then you define things. But what about hearing? This is a term called homophones. And if you just go to Google and translate this term, then you will see something like that. So we as pediatricians talk about cereal, but other people talk about cereal in another context. So it's the same pronunciation, but it is a different word. Also, this is a deer, and this is deer, Dr. Ali. and so on and so forth. So you have our, and you have our here, you have I, and you have I here, as well as, you know, you have a gate in medicine. We always talk about gate, and you have a gate in architecture. So flower in celiac disease, and we have flower, as you could see in this stage. So we need to make, you know, definitions clear to everybody. And this biotic family, we need to define different part of the family. So let us start with the definition of biotic. What is biotic? Biotic means life or like life. And it comes from the term biotikos, which is a Greek term pertaining to life. And it is essentially refers to the biological ecosystem made up of living organisms together with their physical environment. And this is what is going on in our guts. And if it comes to nutritional sense, biotics are a group of nutritionally active components that, when consumed, can confer a health benefit to the host. So this biosis has been discussed by Dr. Luai, which is a state of imbalanced proportion and function of commensal, beneficial, and potentially harmful pathogenic bacteria, largely due to environmental influences and exposures. And it is very important, as was mentioned earlier, in cow milk allergy, you have dysbiosis. However, in breastfed babies, you have a normal, you know, healthy microbiota. So dysbiosis, you know, acquisition and colonization of commensal gut bacteria may also become delayed or disrupted in infants in the, you know, born prematurely. And this has many factors like cesarean birth, antibiotic use, which is very common in our practice in the neonatal, you know, intensive care, exposure to hospital-acquired infection, delayed enteral feeding, or lack of human milk. And all these factors may dispose these premature babies to a state of dysbiosis. Let us go to the definition, or the biotic family, sorry. We have 4 members of the biotic family. At least we have the probiotic, prebiotic, postbiotic, and symbiotic. People get confused with all these, you know, different names. So what are probiotics? It was, you know, discussed this morning, and just Dr. Luai, he mentioned about probiotics. These are live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, confer a health benefit to the host. And probiotic needs supply of prebiotic, like a diet, and these prebiotic will support probiotic growth and activity, and postbiotic will mimic probiotic functional and activity. So it was just a mimicker of probiotic. And all, they will generate reactive oxygen species, regulate and prevent apoptosis, attenuate inflammation, and promote intestinal barrier function. All of these mechanisms are good for the health of our baby's gut. You know, now we can say, to get healthy, you need to eat bacteria. I remember when I was in medical school, when we were studying bacteriology, every day I think I am infected with, you know, bacteria. If I cough, I have TB. If I have diarrhea, I have dysentery, and so on and so forth. And we were scared of bacteria. So nowadays, as Dr. Luai mentioned, things are changing. So you eat bacteria to get healthy. I hope we don't come to a day when they say, get healthy, eat sands, especially with these sandstorms that around, you know, at least in our country here. This is Louis Pasteur. He's very famous, Albastra, and he have identified the Lactobacillus species in the 80s in France. And you know, bacteria or harmful bacteria, because they cause disease, they produce carcinogen substances, and they produce gas and cause symptoms. On the other hand, the beneficial bacteria prevent the growth of harmful bacteria, prime the immune system, aid in the digestion and absorption of food, synthesize vitamin, and to a less extent, you know, they produce secondary bile acid, neutralize dietary carcinogens such as nitrosamines, and conversion to active metabolites of certain products such as sulfasalazine, and important for the intestinal mucosa development and integrity. And these are some of these, you know, bacteria which are used as probiotics, and their mechanism of action. They produce pathogen inhibitory substances, inhibit pathogen attachment, inhibit the action of microbial toxins, stimulation of immunoglobulin A, and trophic effect on intestinal mucosa. As you could see here, we have Lactobacillus rotari, rhamnosus, and acidophilus, and we have this S. boulardii, which is Saccharomyces boulardii. So Lactobacillus is a gram-positive anaerobic bacteria. However, what is Saccharomyces boulardii? It is not a bacteria, it is a fungus. So probiotic is not only bacteria. This is one of the famous probiotic which has been used in clinical practice. So as I mentioned, the most important probiotics used is Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, and Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a fungus also. So to classify a probiotic for clinical application, it should be human origin, able to attach to the human intestinal mucosal cell, capable of colonization of the human intestinal tract, and produce antimicrobial substances, have demonstrable probiotic activity, and survive modern manufacturing processes. And these are important criteria to classify any, you know, organism as a probiotic. On the other hand, it should be isolated from human, survive in the intestine after ingestion, that after eating, and have a proven benefit to the human and be safe when consumed. Short chain fatty acids are the main nutrient source for the cells lining the colon. And they promote a strong gut barrier that helps keep out harmful substances, viruses, and bacteria. And also it helps to reduce inflammation and may have the potential to reduce the risk of cancer. So short chain fatty acids are very important. What are the benefits of probiotic? Normalization of a perturbed microbiota, and this is extremely important. So it will not give, you know, a chance for the harmful bacteria to survive inside the gut. So there will be, you know, some balance, and it has, you know, competitive inhibition of pathogens also, as you know, like Bifidobacteria lactis, PP12, and Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG have been shown to effectively inhibit colonization by pathogenic bacteria, including various species like Clostridium, Campylobacter, Salmonella, Escherichia coli, Shigella, Staphylococcus, and Yersinia. It has been reported that certain probiotics like Bifidobacterium bifidum, Lactobacillus acidophilus, and Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG could play a significant role in preventing or alleviating GI conditions such as C. difficile diarrhea, associated diarrhea, and Helicobacter pylori infection also. The anti-infective benefits of probiotics may extend to prevention of respiratory tract infection, and it directly protect against pathogen colonization and infection in various ways, including competing with pathogens for nutritional sources and adhesion sites, stimulation of mucus secretion to prevent pathogen adhesion, secretion of antimicrobial substances, and supporting the integrity of the epithelial barrier function and modulation and regulation of the immune response. Also, it regulates the gut motility and improve the colic symptoms. In 2018, a meta-analysis included data from 4 randomized trials involving 345 infants with colic, demonstrated that administration of Lactobacillus rotari DSM 17938 significantly reduced crying and or fastness time in breastfed infant with infantile colic. So this goes only the effect in breastfed infants, supplemented with this probiotic, not formula-fed infant, and it has been shown to be effective to reduce crying. Also, it has an immune modulating effect. I think for the sake of time, I will go faster. And also it prevents allergic manifestation. Several small trials have demonstrated allergic symptoms improvement with bifidobacterium strains administered to infants and children with atopic dermatitis. Okay, so this is about probiotic, and then we will move to the prebiotic, which was discussed earlier. These are the substrate that is selectively utilized by host microorganism conferring a health benefits. So this is the food of the probiotic or the good bacteria. And in the breast milk, you have high concentration of a human milk oligosaccharide, and there is a big diversity among different, lactating mothers, and it has, majority of the oligosaccharide in milk are not digested by human infants and serve as a prebiotic, especially Bifidobacterium longum bifor infantis, and there are more than 700 unique genes. And research, need to be developed more to understand more, data about the effect of, these oligosaccharides on the health of these infants. Again, going back to the human milk, this is a big list of the composition of human milk. And you could see this oligosaccharide, prebiotic oligosaccharide in breast milk. It is not found in cow milk. So this is one of the peculiar, characteristic of breast milk. And that's why we always talk about, the importance of breast milk. And we need to encourage breast milk in our, community and work as advocate for our children. If a baby is born, the baby is sterile after birth. He will be inoculated with maternal and environmental bacteria, and there is diverse microbiota. If you have a breastfed baby, then the beneficial bacteria dominated by bifidobacteria will be developed in the gut of this infant. On the other hand, if you have formula fed without a prebiotic, then there will be diverse microbiota, and dietary influence like human milk oligosaccharide is important in order to mimic, the breast milk and try to minimize the harmful bacteria as much as you can. So for the human milk oligosaccharide, it's highly abundant and unique to human milk. It has anti-adhesive, antimicrobial property, reduce the risk of viral, bacterial, protozoal infection, and it has other beneficial effects also. and most data in vitro, ex vivo, or animal studies, and powered randomized controlled intervention studies needed. So we need more studies about the beneficial effect of HMO. Since it is found in the breast milk, it is for sure it is beneficial. And these are a list of some of these oligosaccharides which is used in the formulas in order to produce the effect as prebiotic. In this study, it has shown that, significantly higher number of bifidobacteria and the lactobacilli in supplemented formula groups with oligosaccharide. As you have the higher dose, maybe the slide is missing, but if you go with a higher dose, 0.8 gram per deciliter, then you will have this effect. On the other hand, also the presence of prebiotic oligosaccharide, it will improve stool frequency as well as stool consistency as compared to the breast milk. And these multiple studies have concentrated on stool frequency and consistency, and it has shown that galacto-oligosaccharide and fructo-oligosaccharide are important factors to improve constipation in these infants. So to summarize this prebiotic, this cartoon show you that the prebiotics is extremely important for the survival of probiotic, and I mean the beneficial bacteria in the gut. I have Dr. Sahir missed the farm. When you go to the farm, you can enjoy the prebiotic and postbiotic there, and it is very good for your health. So what about synbiotic? Syn, Dr. Ali, بالإنجليزي ذنب ولا لا؟ Syn, this is a combination. So symbiotic are a mixture of live microorganism and substrates selectively utilized by host microorganism that confers a health benefit to the host. And what are the benefits of this symbiotic? It has bifidogenic effects. And this clinical data indicate that symbiotic supplemented formula with bifidobacteria, lactobacilli, and oligosaccharide significantly increases bifidobacteria gut colonization compared with non-supplemented formula, supporting the development of robust host microbiota mutualism, as you could see in the graph. And it has effect also in prevention of allergy and priming the immune function, because of its immune modulatory effect of the pre and probiotic. If you have the mixture such as GOS and FOS plus P, Prefi, M16V, it's an attractive therapeutic proportion for further enhancing immune function. It has been suggested that the symbiotic concept may be involved in suppression of IgE-mediated immune response also. So the symbiotic has many actions. It prevents diarrhea and constipation, strengthen immunity, destroy pathogens, normalize the intestinal microflora, improve the absorption of vitamins and trace elements, and prevention of seasonal infection diseases, and improve digestion and improve skin condition. So if you combine both prebiotic and postbiotics, then you have the maximum benefit of both. What about postbiotic? It is the preparation of inanimate microorganism and or their component that confers a health benefit on the target host. So these postbiotics are product of التخمير, fermentation. And these, postbiotic have been, shown to that it contains, intact inanimate microbial cells or microbial cell fragments structure with or without metabolites and end product. And, The postbiotic is also very important. You have various preclinical trials for specific postbiotic compounds that have been shown to impact gut microbiota composition, intestinal barrier function, and the innate and adaptive immune system. And this is just preclinical studies, and it need to be studies more in humans. So in infant formula, the concept of postbiotic is not widely used, although it is available for many years now, especially in Europe. And it is, fermented formula are generally derived from fermentation of a milk matrix by food grade bacteria such as Bifidobacterium, Streptococcus, and Lactobacillus strains. Inactivation of the bacteria during post-fermentation production poses such as homogenization, pasteurization, sterilization, and spray dyeing ensure that fewer or non-viable bacteria remain in the final product. And these fermented formula has the potential to improve some digestive symptoms, particularly lower gastrointestinal symptoms. Systematic review of the available literature concluded that infants that could potentially benefit from fermented formulas are those with digestive discomfort, including colic, bloating, and infants with diarrhea. And there is some rationale for harnessing the immune modulatory activity of postbiotic to provide other benefits, such as improving atopic dermatitis symptoms. Also, recently, postbiotic has been suggested as a potential preventive strategy against necrotizing enterocolitis in preterm infant. If you combine prebiotic and postbiotic, this will be of additional value for infants, as the combination may positively impact the immune system through the gut and gut microbiota. And this combination has been tested in lab to investigate the effect of the combination on the immune system and the gut. A rat model investigated the effect of the infant formula with probiotic and postbiotic in gut variability. For the sake of time, I will not go through the details of this study. However, the fermented product was blended into a complete infant formula containing 30% fermented powder, and this was later adapted to 26 in the newly developed concept. So in the 30% and 26% fermented formula are equivalent as in the clinical study products, and 4% was represented by lactose, which was added after fermentation. So 200 healthy infants were included before the age of 28 days and used the study products until the age of 17 weeks. Breastfed infants were included as a reference group. And the clinical study demonstrated that the combination of specific probiotic and postbiotic in infant formula is safe and well tolerated and has a positive impact on the gut and its gut microbiota. So it's very important to have the concept of combining prebiotic and postbiotic in infant formula, which will confer a health benefit to these babies. At the end, I think if you choose between these, two, the healthy food and the unhealthy food, I think everybody will use the healthy food, and this concept should go when we deal with these, infants, always choose the best feed for them, which is breastfeeding. Thank you very much and enjoy your dinner.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Dr. Luay, if you can kindly join us on the stage for the questions. And if anyone has any question or comment, the floor is open. Yes, Dr. Muhammad.
Thank you, Dr. Lai. Thank you, Dr. Ali. I have a question, each of you. Dr. Lai, you mentioned about immune tolerance. So what I understand in immune or immune therapies, that we need to have immune tolerance by introduction into interleukin 10. So do you have any, from a immunological point of view, about the interleukin 10s that it's been growth or strong evidence that make the child, especially for cow milk protein allergy, that we need to increase his interleukin 10?
شكرا دكتور محمد. طبعا most of the studies which been conducted within the field of food allergy were focused on especially when you talk about the food immunotherapy. The food immunotherapy is a new concept which has been in aeroallergens or the other immunotherapy like grass, house dust mite. It's been in the market for hundreds of years. But the food immunotherapy is something new, probably in the last 5 years. So the concept is the same which we talked about, but we are talking not prevention, we're talking about as treatment. So those individuals, they have allergy, they are already allergic, and we want to introduce food to them in which we make them tolerate that amount. So it is extremely risky that you are giving someone who is allergic to peanut, you are giving him peanut. Okay. The only food which been studied intensively is peanuts so far and cow milk. If you look at the cytokine production and cytokine up or down regulation in those children, you will definitely have down regulation of interleukin 4 and 5 in those patients who can tolerate the foods. And as you said, there are certain cytokines which are upregulated in those patients who already tolerated that food.
Okay. Question for Dr. Ali. Regarding, I'm sure you are reviewing all these probiotics, and I want to understand why bifidobacterium is taking the first part. So I don't understand if you compare to the other bacteria, bifidobacterium, especially in breast milk and especially in the gut. So do you have any idea, Dr. Ali?
Well, I have no clear explanation, but you know, in our life, you have good things and bad things. So you cannot say why Dr. Hasousa is good and Dr. Ali is bad. So I don't know, but these are labels as good bacteria, while the others are bad. And subhanallah, yani, when you study these cesarean section versus vaginal delivery babies, then it has been shown that, you know, the vaginal, you know, delivery breastfed babies has, you know, these dominant, you know, beneficial bacteria. So it has been created by God as a beneficial, but I don't have a real explanation for that.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the nice topics and presentations. My question to Dr. Luai. I don't know, I could not come out with a clear message from your presentation about the theory of exposure and early exposure. So if we, I don't know, this theory would explain both kind of allergy, like IgE mediated or non-IgE or cell mediated. And if you do believe in that, and we are talking about timing of exposure, and if we need to apply this theory, like for example, for cow's milk allergy, then maybe we need to go a little bit earlier to early and prenatal. So maybe the mother exposure early and during the pregnancy might be better and give tolerance to early onset allergy, like cow's milk allergy. So I still need a clear message from you.
طبعا the science behind this, as I said, it's evolving. So what Dr. Khalid was saying, if you are promoting for early life exposure, why we don't go a few steps even before birth? And that was been studied. They looked at pregnant ladies, especially in their different trimesters, there was some evidence, but not strong evidence, that modulating their diet, including very selection of what they are going to eat, can reflect or can be a risk factor for the future atopy or food allergy. So it's been studied, it's been there. However, the evidence was not very strong. The message which we need to deliver, that we have to be very careful of what that child should receive or eat in their first few, let's say, months of life, at least the first 6 months of life. The gut microbiota, the immune system tolerance, the antigenicity of the food they are taking is very critical, especially in the first. Why those children who receive peanut early in life in the LEAP study, they didn't develop the allergy in the future. Even when they stopped peanut in the future, they continue to be not to develop a peanut allergy. So that time is critical. What happens is that probably we need more to understand what is happening. So the message is, you just need to be careful of what you give. Children who had already diagnosed with cow milk protein allergy is a different story. You don't need to expose them. However, the ideal way of exposing a child to the antigen is the breastfeeding.
Just a comment, correct me, Luay, if I am mistaken, but I think there was a study less than a year, which was published from one of the European countries, that those mothers in the 3rd trimester who were restricted from cow milk, protein or dairy product, their kids have higher incidence of allergy, as it was thought. So this may just contradict what is the understanding of, whether you go one step further back and
Dr. Ahmed.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the speakers. Very good talks. My question is for actually any one of you guys, according to your experience, do you think using the commercially available probiotics that contain a single strain of bacteria, it's going really to modulate our immune system that's exposed to hundreds, thousands, and millions of other bacteria?
to just be frank, as it's not that clear whether the type or the dose, or you cannot, just advise any patient, whether a child or adult, to go and buy probiotic from the supermarket or from the pharmacy. Because whatever has been published about the benefits of the prebiotic was related to specific strains and specific, medical condition and specific doses. So it's very difficult, you cannot imagine, our body has these million of bacteria, come 2 kilos, 2 kilos of bacteria. We could not imagine this in the past, but everything is possible. But prescribing probiotic to patients need to be more specified for a specific clinical condition, and you have very limited clinical conditions which will benefit from probiotic. But if you have, studies has shown that this probiotic or this bacteria has been used and it has shown beneficial effect on antibiotic associated diarrhea, then you have evidence. So you will go with the evidence.
In that line, also with the same concept regarding in colic, when they give them and breastfed infants, studies have shown that the benefit is breastfed compared to formula-fed infants. Dr. Ali Shamrani.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the elegant type of lecture that we have heard tonight, Haqiqa. And I really say, alhamdulillah, that we did not mess it up. Dr. Loay again. As gastroenterologist, I know I'm going to deviate a little bit from the allergens. It's sort of still allergen, but as gastro, we do believe that we are going to challenge patients who's having, for example, allergies to the wheat allergy for patients having gluten-sensitive enteropathy. We might have a problem because of the anaphylaxis, for example, or you need to be nearby the medical staff and so on and so forth. Now, we do meet such patients. They are free. They don't have a problem actually with the gluten-sensitive enteropathy, so they don't harm their gut. But they do have a problem with the allergy of the skin. So they do have what you call the wheat allergy to their skin rather than the gut. So the gut, they're free. Thus, this one, if we just challenge them with the small amounts, okay, we have heard that the peanuts and the milk, yes, you do have these kinds of, does it help if we give them small and small? Is going to be what will look like safe for them so that they can tolerate it and they don't have a problem in the gut. Thank you.
So the wheat in specific, and there is a difference between wheat allergy, which is type 1 hypersensitivity, which is an IgE-mediated reaction, which leads to anaphylaxis, versus the celiac, which is not. However, if you're talking about wheat allergy, if you have an evidence of IgE-mediated, whether it's a blood or skin test, so giving wheat is risky because it's a risk of anaphylaxis. However, if you reach to a stage where the child, most of the families are inpatient. By 2 years, we know that wheat is a self-limited disease by time children can tolerate. So most of the families are inpatient. So when they come to you, most of the families, they come to me and say that we already started, for example, foods containing cow milk. So you know that at that stage, that child can start tolerating. However, giving wheat, whether it is a smaller amount or not, is risky, and it's not recommended as long as the child is allergic. Even if you look at the peanut immunotherapy, which is, or the cow immunotherapy, which is going to be introduced very soon, you are talking about a very minute amount of the protein. You are talking about 0.01 milligram of protein, the protein itself. And you have to build it gradually, very calculated, because we said the dose need to be very calculated in a way you don't want your patient to develop anaphylaxis at the end. And food allergy is unpredictable. I always, patient come to my clinic, look, he's eating a peanut, or he's eating, or nothing happens. It's unpredictable. This time it can be a skin, next time it can be anaphylaxis. So you have to be careful.
Yes, Doctora.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for all speakers for this beneficial and interesting lectures. I want to ask Dr. Loay, for that way, what do you mean by high risk infant or baby? We will introduce for them the allergenic food like peanuts or nuts. They have a family history of food allergy, or they have a history of cow milk allergy or another allergy, and how we can introduce under medical supervision, yani the mother like the challenge test of cow milk, or at home by little or small doses, how can we with peanut butter, or what the kind we can introduce?
The high risk group, which has been in the LEAP study, those were children with a family, first degree family member with not only food allergy, A to B. So a father with asthma, a sister with eczema. So they considered the new child is a high risk because it's a genetic disease. So we know that child is susceptible to develop atopic diseases, which include food allergy. So the recommendations now, even high risk infants or children, you start giving them everything from 6 months, everything as normal children, even if they are at high risk. We are all pediatrician. We used to say, wait until 1 year for peanut, 4 years for seafoods. Now that's not anymore recommended. 6 months, once you finish that exclusive breastfeeding period, you give everything as a normal child. Fish, nuts, of course, in a way they can swallow and eat or drink. but there is no precautions even in the high risk group regarding
yeah.
food introduction.
At home, at the like the
Absolutely.
usual,
Yes, at home. No testing before. You don't test. You don't do the skin or blood test before, even the high risk group.
Yes, there's, so we'll have one more last question. Yes.
I heard Montelukast, but the first one was what? The first one before Montelukast? What is that? No. It has no evidence, neither in food allergy, no. No, absolutely not.
Okay, I think we'll close here. This is one, yeah, we have one more last question.
Thank you for lecture, Dr. Luay. About tolerance. We give peanut. First occur eczema when the first start. Nothing happen. After that occur anaphylactic shock. When give peanut in the baby in the first time. Has a baby, if there is give peanut in the first, and after that there is anaphylactic shock after that. Okay. Has a depend on tolerance or depend on the allergy?
So he received peanut and he developed anaphylaxis. So that's type 1, which is a reaction. So Th2 pathway. So that's not tolerance. Peanut is one of the foods which very less likely to be tolerated with time. However, that's why they started with their immunotherapy, because cow milk and eggs and wheat most likely you will tolerate, but peanut is not. So peanut is not, if you develop a reaction, that's a Th2 pathway, not a T regulatory pathway.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your attendance, and thank you to Nutricia for hosting this satellite symposium for this evening. And I hope you all enjoy it. So dinner is served, inshallah. So thank you very much.